Good morning, this is Chris.
And Brian.
Reading the Society News for Friday, November the 9th, 2018. On Tuesday, the strollers will be meeting on Tuesday, the 13th of November, for a walk in East Cowes. They will meet for coffee at Clarence Road Church at approximately 10:30 a.m. The walk will start in Beatrice Avenue, walking down through Victoria Park to Kingston Road. Lunch will follow afterwards at the Prince of Wales at 12 noon. Please ring the Society if you would like to join the strollers group. The Ride Swimming Group will be swimming this coming Tuesday, the 13th of November, at the Waterside Pool in Ryde. The swimming group has sole use of the pool during the session, and there are lifeguards in attendance. If you are interested in joining the group, please contact the Society to advise us of your swimming ability.
Wednesday. The weekly coffee morning will be held at Millbrook House this Wednesday, 14th of November, between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea as well as a piece of cake. Our weekly low vision drop-in event will also be running between 10 a.m. and 12 noon to allow you to view and try the low vision equipment we have at the Society without the need for an appointment. The book group will be meeting at Lord Louis Library on Wednesday, 14th of November, between 1:30 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. We discuss the last month's book over tea and coffee and hand out the book for the next month. The books are available on CD or USB. Please contact Laura Jasper on 522205 for more information, or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
Thursday. The Thursday Social Group are meeting on Thursday the 15th of November at Millbrook House. The group meets from 10:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. You can knit or just have a chat. Then later in the afternoon, volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics.
Any other news? Short writing competition. The short story writing competition for entries has now closed. You're invited to come along to the awards ceremony to find out who the 30 winners are on Monday, 17th of December at 7 p.m. Doors open from 6:30 p.m. at the Riverside Centre, The Quay, Newport. This year we have entertainment from Melodic, a fantastic choir who will be singing a selection of festive songs. The amazing Huxley Magician will also be entertaining with a selection of incredible magic tricks and bad dad jokes. Admission is free, and we hope you will find the time to come along and support us. If you have any questions about the evening, then please contact Chris Kane on 522205 or email admin@iwsb.org.uk.
British Wireless for the Blind Fund. Visually impaired people are being invited to see if they are eligible for a free, specially adapted radio from a charity. British Wireless for the Blind Fund, BWBF, provides the equipment to those with sight loss across the UK who meet its criteria. Radio is a lifeline to those who are blind and partially sighted, providing companionship and helping them to keep in touch with what is going on in the world, as well as the local community. BWBF offers equipment free of charge to those who have sight loss and are in receipt of a means-tested benefit. BWBF is launching its Reaching Out campaign to try and increase awareness about their equipment and help more people who are blind or partially sighted. Regional Development Manager Sophie Wilden said, "Our radios are designed so that a person with sight loss can use them easily and independently. All equipment is delivered to the home by a volunteer who sets it all up and provides support in using it. We offer a range of equipment: digital radios, CD players, memory stick players, internet radio, and even a specially designed app. Our radios are vital to someone who cannot see. They provide news, information and entertainment, but also, more importantly, companionship and a friendly voice. If you or someone you know is interested in a BWBF radio, please contact Sophie Weldon at Sophie, spelled SOPHIE, at blind.org.uk or phone 01283 790 208 or 07540 724 063. To find out more about British Wireless for the Blind Fund, go to www.blind.org.uk. Sight for Wight has a pre-owned Optilic Clearview Plus Speech video magnifier for sale. The price is £500. The price for a new machine is around £2,000, and this would include delivery. If you are interested in this item, please contact Laura Jasper on 522 205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk to make an appointment to see the magnifier.
Scaffolding news. Please find below a list of known footway obstruction for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chairs permits that have been issued in the past week. Cows and East Cows. Current scaffolds. 93 High Street Cows, scaffold up within hoarding. Cows Library, Beckford Road, Cows. Painters Arms, 51 Cross Street, Cows. New scaffolds. 25 Clarence Road, East, Cows. Current hoardings. 93 High Street, Cows. Current skips. 13 Oakfield Road, East, Cows. Grassed area, 12 Princess Close, East, Cows. Newport area. Current scaffolds. Santander, 56 St James Street, Newport. Key Cottage, 12 Key Street, Newport. 10 St James Street, Newport. NatWest, 107 St James Street, Newport. 61A Parr Street, Newport. Cancer Research Shop, 116 High Street, Newport. The EE Shop, 122 High Street, Newport. Cash Recycle Shop, 140 High Street, Newport. Samaritan Shop, Lugley Street, Newport. 2 Bedford Road, Newport. 44 Honey Hill, Newport. Current skips: 65 Medina Avenue, Newport. 38 Highfield Road, Newport. Building materials: EE Shop, 122 High Street, Newport.
Ryde, Seaview and Bembridge. Current scaffolds: Boots, 170 High Street, Ryde. Hills Court, High Street, Ryde. 12A High Street, Ryde. 105 High Street, Ryde. The Castle Inn, 164 High Street, Ryde. 47 George Street, Ryde. My Dentist, 10 to 11 Cross Street Ride, 43 Nelson Street Ride, Pierview Court, St Thomas's Street Ride, Seaview Pharmacy, Pier Road, Seaview. Current skips: 32 Fallen Road, Bembridge, Woodlands, Ryde Road, Seaview, Carita, Stane Road, Seaview. New skips: 21 to 23 St Michael's Avenue Ryde, Building Materials and Hoarding, Car Park, Brooks Road, Bembridge.
Sandown and Shanklin, current scaffolds. Premier Inn 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown. The Toymaster 103 High Street, Sandown. Sandown Library 119 High Street, Sandown. 46 Fitzroy Street, Sandown. Sandringham Hotel, Esplanade, Sandown. Current skips: 13 Coronation Gardens, Shanklin. Current hoardings: Premier Inn 1 to 9 Esplanade, Sandown. Junction of St Boniface Road and Arthur's Hill, Shanklin. Ventnor area. Current scaffolds: corner of Trinity Road and Madeira Road, Ventnor, 1 Boniface Road and into Trinity Road, Ventnor. Current skips: Seascape, St Catherine's Road, Ventnor. Mead Cottage, Newport Road, Knighton. Freshwater area. Current scaffolds: Duo, 86 Avenue Road, Freshwater. The Barn, Main Road, Thorley.
This week's In Touch: the future of navigating our streets. 2 Leeds University projects are examining the future of the streets and the impact on visually impaired people, and how you can win up to $20,000 by inventing Braille technology. Over the next 12 months, In Touch is planning a series of stories and interviews looking at the changing landscape of our streets and the ways in which councils, rehabilitation trainers and technology can help visually impaired people cope with this fast-changing picture. Professors Anna Lawson and Rich Romano are both leading on different projects looking at the future of towns and cities. Professor Lawson is focusing on the elements that cause people to feel excluded from the streets, while Professor Romano's is looking at using virtual reality and digital means of putting planning into the hands of people. National Braille Press, a non-profit organisation in the United States, offers a prize of up to $20,000 to people inventing new ways of getting Braille and tactile information into the hands of visually impaired people. Peter Wight speaks to the president of National Braille Press, Brian MacDonald, and the 2015 winner, Betsy Flenner. The presenter is Peter Wight and the producer is Lee Kamutat.
The County Press, Friday 9th of November. Traders pledge the fight is on. Small business anger over parking charges. Small businesses on the island have vowed to fight plans to introduce parking charges in the heavily used town centre streets. The County Press revealed last week the Isle of Wight Council is looking to raise cash by introducing charges in Ryde Town Centre, including Union Street, plus Node Hill and Crocker Street, as well as extending fees on esplanades. The proposed charges have been called another nail in the coffin for small businesses by traders in both towns, and they have accused the council of failing to support independent shops or having a consistent parking strategy. Released last week, 4 months earlier than planned, Council 2019-20 budget papers outline the proposals. Traders in Newport and Ryde have said the plans will mean fewer spaces on the streets and fewer customers in their shops. Ryde Business Association said the fight is on. Joe Randall from Love Running Newport said, suddenly inflicting charges where there were none won't mean the same people are going to be parking there and paying those fees. They will be parking elsewhere or just not coming into town. Plans for Union Street could include the installation of ticket machines or the rezoning of the street. Chair of Ryde Business Association, Zoe Thompson, said, there needs to be a strategy when it comes to parking in our towns. Councillor Stuart Hutchinson, member for Finance on the Council Cabinet, said, in some towns on-street parking is free and in others it's paid for. We're trying to introduce an element of fairness. Introducing charges will bring increased customer turnover in those areas where we levy a charge. In those areas where people are parking for free all day, they will only park for a short period of time because they will have to pay for it. Traders in Node Hill said these charges would cut footfall if the 30 minutes free parking was removed. Councillor Hutchinson said these claims were the opinion of the traders. The plans were set to be approved by Cabinet last night, Thursday. There will be consultation before they go before Council in February.
What the traders say. Melly Selak from Stokesbury's. It's a shame the council thinks only of the money and not putting the interests of Newport of the street first and not doing something for this area. Because this area is so original, it's a little gem. This street is so important for Newport. Abdul Mir Noodle Pot. Parking charges will kill the local business in St James's Street, where people pop in and out during the day. That's how traders make their money. Bill McComb, Croc Shop and Ralph's. If people have got to pay for parking instead of using the 30 minutes to have a very quick shop, they will use the time they have spent their money on by leaving their cars here. It will make the parking situation worse. The council give us nothing. We get nothing for our rates. We don't even get rubbish collection. And now it is trying to destroy our business by ensuring people who do come here will not park their cars here. Sheila Wilson from Sugar and Spice Lingerie. Parking is a constant worry. If parking could be free for the town, that would certainly help local traders. Most people have said that introducing charges would stop them popping into town. John McLaughlin, Newport Business Association and Take Two Hair. This is going to be detrimental because people are going to pay for the whole duration and go off. It's another nail in the coffin for small businesses that are trying to provide a service to the community. Node Hill is a community road. It's almost the biggest little high street in Newport. Colin Burgess, Cafe Isola. Every time they alter things with the parking, our businesses take a hit and it goes down. We have still not recovered from the last parking rise. Nigel Smith, Bagel Wrap. The casual shoppers may not stop. If people have got to pay from the start of parking to the end, they may not stop to do fundamental tasks in the town.
Businesses speak out on parking charges. Parking on the island could become more expensive if the proposed budget plans are approved by the council. Node Hill and Crocker Street in Newport and Union Street in Ryde could all be affected by the charges, which will net the council more than £200,000 if implemented. Evening charges in all on-street chargeable areas and off-street car parks will see residents paying £1 to park between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Traders in both Newport and Ryde have criticised the charges, saying they would put off customers who would be reluctant to pay if they were just stopping for a short time. Councillor Hutchinson has said the introduction of charges would bring an element of fairness, while business owners have said taking away the short periods of free parking would decrease turnover.
And now for other news in the county press. Island rallies round after Newport Pet Centre blaze. The island community has rallied round to support the Isle of Wight Pet Centre in Newport after a number of animals, including a much-loved cockatoo, Brolly, died in a fire on Monday night. Hundreds of messages of support have been posted on Facebook, and a fundraising appeal to help the business has raised more than £2,500. The centre lost all of its birds and some reptiles in the blaze, although the exact number isn't known. Many people paid tribute to Brolly in particular, who was a popular draw at the Watergate Road Centre and thought to be around 42 years old. The Pet Centre team described him as our amazing, sweet, noisy boy. Another person said, "I'm so heartbroken about all of the animals, especially Brolly." Another added, "We are so sad to hear of this tragedy. My little girl loved coming to see all the wonderful animals. We shall miss him always, but are thankful for all the animals that survived." The centre thanked everyone for their help, posting on Facebook, "It has been eye-opening just how wonderful the island is at supporting one another. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you to everyone who gave up their time to drop off donations, help clean up the shop or offered help in any other form. You're all angels." Owner of the centre, Paul Collins, had a special support from his fire service colleagues at the incident. Paul, a retained fire officer, said, "The fire service have been great. Even a number of off-duty fire officers came to the scene on the night for support. Some of them came up after their shift the next day to help with the clear-up as well. I was so grateful." Leighton Bryant, command support officer for the incident, said he knew at once the property belonged to Paul. "He is a member of the service, so he's one of our own. The job takes on a new meaning." An investigation into the cause of the fire is ongoing, but initial reports suggest an electrical fault. The centre has rehomed all the surviving animals and has received enough donations of food. The team said, "All of you are wonderful, and we hope that when the time comes to reopen, we can still count on your support to help us keep going."
Bill for Floating Bridge 6, 6.4 million so far. The problem-plagued floating bridge linking Cowes with East Cowes has cost more than £6.4 million so far, according to a report. The revised business case for the floating bridge report looked at options including scrapping the vessel or selling it to be used on Lake Windermere, but said that was unlikely to be realistic. Around £500,000 has been spent on options for remedial works to the bridge since it came into service last May. Meanwhile, a further £539,000 has been spent on the replacement launch service which crosses the Medina when the bridge is out of action, according to a report published by the Solent Local Enterprise Partnership LEP. The total cost to build the bridge came to just over £3 million, with slipways costing more than £683,000 and professional fees, including naval architects, coming to more than £328,000. However, noise mitigation works have cost more than £31,000 according to the report. The total cost so far for the bridge comes to more than £5,931,000. In addition, more than £539,000 has been spent in the last 18 months on the replacement launch service, according to the report. East Cowes councillor Carl Love renewed his calls for the Isle of Wight Council's Cabinet Member for Transport, Councillor Ian Ward, to resign over the project's spiralling cost. He said the council was facing budget costs and yet it was spending cash on the floating bridge. He said, "What could we have done with all that money? Councillor Ward has to go. It's an absolutely disgraceful state of affairs. The buck has to stop somewhere." However, Councillor Ward rejected calls for him to quit, saying the council still had legal issues to resolve, which could have an impact on the final cost of the bridge. He said, "We are still in negotiations with the designer, and I can't give you any further detail about that because of the legal issues involved. Hopefully, we can recover some of these costs."
Dealer caught by drugs in the post. An inept drug dealer was snagged after Royal Mail office staff smelt skunk cannabis coming from a package which was being mailed to his home address. Jamie Hall, 23, of Albert Street, Cowes, admitted one charge of supplying cannabis and a further charge of possession at a sentencing hearing at the Isle of Wight Crown Court last Friday. The court heard, on April the 6th this year, Royal Mail staff smelled cannabis coming from a parcel addressed to Hall. They informed the police, who visited his home the next day and asked him if he had any cannabis. He presented them with a small, white pot containing the drug and a pair of scales. The package contained cannabis with a street value of between £280 and £400. Hall's phone was also examined by police. Messages were found concerned with the supply of cannabis, said Thomas Ackworth, prosecuting. Hall was interviewed by police and made full admissions, saying he had supplied people in order to fund his own habit. Representing Hall, Oscar Vincent said his client had been open and honest with the police. He said he was effectively buying in bulk to supply cannabis to a discreet customer base. It was not a large operation and certainly not motivated by commercial gain. Recorder Charles Morrison told Hall he had been extremely foolish to use the postal service to get the drugs. He was jailed for 8 months, suspended for a year, and told to complete 100 hours of unpaid work.
New bar to be something completely different. A funky new eatery, bar and accommodation venue is set to come to Newport's town square. Matt Parker, owner of the Union Inn Cowes and the Wheatsheaf Newport, plans to bring a restaurant specialising in street food and world beers to Charterhouse in St Thomas's Square. Mr Parker said, "Isle of Wight companies, including Dumpling, will team together with me to make cutting-edge street food. I'll be getting craft and world beers from mainland wholesalers as well as island-based breweries, and we will make sure the beers match the cuisine." Nat from Dumpling said, "I'm very excited about it. The whole project is going to be a great effort. You'll have to watch this space about what the menu will be, but obviously dumplings will be included." Mr Parker said a lot of his ideas are from the bars he visits while in China, where his son lives. It will have a real Bangkok theme. It'll be something completely different for the Isle of Wight. Mr Parker said the main wow factor in the venue, however, would be the accommodation. The bedrooms are absolutely fantastic. When they're all finished, they may be the best place to stay on the island. The views over the church are really nice, and there's just a real sense of loveliness. The 6 rooms will be state-of-the-art, executive-style living quarters. The venue will keep the traditional name of the building, Charter House. Mr. Parker said there was a whole history to the name he wanted to preserve. Although work has already started in the building, the time frame for the project is unknown. I'm very excited about the project, said Mr. Parker. I like turning old, redundant things into new things. It's what makes me tick.
Homeless project frustrated. The Isle of Wight bus shelter has admitted it is struggling to get planning permission for it to relaunch on a new site. The bus shelter was set up in 2016 to help people affected by the closure of the night shelter. A double-decker bus was bought and converted to include 20 beds as well as toilets and facilities for anyone who stayed to wash and dry their clothes, shower, eat and relax. It successfully helped rehouse 22 people full-time. It was taken over by a new group of individuals last year after running into difficulties. The bus was moved to a new site at Hydromar Limited, Sandown, in the summer and had extensive refurbishment, but it has now been frustrated in its attempts to secure planning. A spokesman said on Facebook, "The site is subject to planning permission. We submitted a pre-planning application to open dialogue with planners prior to a full planning application. This process took longer than expected and has not been a positive experience. The project has been successful in other areas of the country which have established the same service. We felt the service had never really been given the chance to fulfil its full potential. Huge amounts of work have gone into trying to re-establish this resource. We are still trying to establish the current administration's stance, and with meetings still to take place, views and perceptions clarified, it wouldn't be appropriate to make a comment or a statement. We will, in the next few weeks, be able to clarify fully."
Spice Girls Festival slot speculation. It may be what we really want, but speculation the Spice Girls could be performing at the Isle of Wight Festival next year has been dismissed by festival boss John Giddings. The 90s pop band announced a reunion tour this week with a series of dates in June and a gap around the Isle of Wight Festival, prompting speculation the girl group had left the dates free to perform at the festival. However, when the county press contacted Mr. Giddings, who is also the managing director of Solo Music Agency, he said, "It's just a rumour. We're involved in the tour, but it's nothing to do with the festival. I haven't even asked them." The Spice Girls minus Victoria Beckham will be performing their first tour for a decade, with 6 stadium dates in June. Other tour date announcements have had people guessing at who might headline at the Isle of Wight Festival, including Pink, Arctic Monkeys, Bon Jovi and the Eagles. Mr. Giddings said, "I would love the Arctic Monkeys to play. I asked them ages ago, but I haven't heard back from them. I'm not going to talk about artists. It's too dangerous. When you deny it, no one believes you anyway." The Isle of Wight Festival takes place from June the 13th to the 16th, and early bird tickets are on sale now.
Honours for older people. Older islanders from all walks of life have been honoured at an awards ceremony aimed at recognising those who make the island a better place to live. The 4th annual Celebrating Age Awards ceremony took place at Lakeside Park, Wootton, as part of this year's Celebrating Age Festival, hosted by Age UK Isle of Wight's Age Friendly Island programme. The evening began with an opening speech from Island High Sheriff Joya Minghella Giddens, who handed over to Master of Ceremonies Jack Weddercop, Age-Friendly Island Development Officer. Jack delighted attendees with insights into the stories behind all the nominations across the 8 categories, which included some very touching quotes and anecdotes from friends, family and loved ones. Helen Lewis, Age-Friendly Island Officer, gave an overview of the success of this year's record-breaking festival, which included more than 60 events and activities across the island for those aged 50 and over. The Age-Friendly Challenge accolade was awarded to Mike Sadler, nominated by Elizabeth Martin of Carers Isle of Wight. The audience heard the inspirational story how Mike, who has Alzheimer's and dementia, had found it hard to find the right words when he was conversing with others, and so, to overcome this, he designed a card he could use when out and about to help others to better understand his struggles. Carers Isle of Wight helped Mike to share the cards with others who also found them useful, and subsequently GP surgeries have also requested cards for patients encountering similar difficulties. The 8 awards were sponsored by Southern Vectis, Southern Housing Group, Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce, Red Funnel, Sainsbury's, Mia, Stylish Windows and Tesco.
Fury at draining of popular pond. Investigations have been launched into a developer's work at a Pan Country Park pond which has angered the community. Residents, a councillor and wildlife protectors have slammed the consequences of the work which began last weekend. On Saturday, the pond had been emptied and left a puddle-sized muddy mess. One resident, Elizabeth Arnold, said the pond looked as if it had been flattened and a concrete residue left around the site. She said, "Something needs to be done to fully reinstate the pond to what it was, not in a year's time, not in 2 years' time, but before spring, when the wildlife will need it once again." She said the pond had once been full of toads, frogs and newts, and families had used the site to pond dip. The Pan Meadows development will ultimately extend nearly as far as the pond, but Isle of Wight councillor Jeff Brodie, who represents Newport East, said the country park was supposed to provide a buffer against urban creep. He said, "It seems to me the only consideration the developer Barrett's give is to their shareholders, as they have repeatedly done everything in their power to annoy local people. In this instance, it seems a bit like a marauding army devastating the countryside." Councillor Brodie said he was bombarded with complaints about the actions of Barrett's as people walking in the area saw the devastation. Parliamentary candidate for the Isle of Wight Green Party, Vix Lothian, said the situation was appalling and a horrible attack on wildlife. A spokesman for Barrett Homes said the work was to facilitate water drainage for the consented development it had been working on closely with the Isle of Wight Council offices, but the Isle of Wight Council said the work was not part of the agreed schedule with Barrett's. A council spokesperson said the council was investigating the work.
TV show up for BAFTA. A programme featuring 2 Ryde schoolchildren whose father is serving 24 years in jail for drug smuggling has been nominated for a BAFTA Children's Award. Maisie Beer, 15, and brother Flynn, 12, took part in a documentary aired on CBBC entitled Missing Dad, a film which highlighted the loss of growing up without a parent. Their father, Jonathan, was one of 5 men, known as the Freshwater Five, sentenced to a total of 104 years in jail after being convicted of importing drugs on a boat to the island in 2011. He is currently appealing his conviction. Maisie and Flynn took part in the programme to try to support around 250,000 children in the UK who have a parent in prison. The children both attend Christ the King College, Newport, and Maisie said, "I was struggling with depression and anxiety, but Mum was contacted by children's charity Bernardo's, where she is part of their community support team. Prison affects all families and children, and society can be very judgmental, suggesting there can be no smoke without fire." Flynn is making videos of himself growing up for John to watch when he is eventually released.
Proposal to spruce up holiday park. A major renovation could be on the cards for Sandown Bay Holiday Park, Yaverland. A planning application has been submitted to the Isle of Wight Council seeking approval for the partial demolition of the disused entertainment block, refurbished toilet facilities, a new restaurant, bar, cafe, shop and laundrette. 10 new chalets with a children's play area and 3-bed management accommodation could also be approved. The application submitted by the owners of the holiday park said regeneration of Sandown Bay Holiday Centre is urgently needed. The boarded-up entertainment block is far from attractive. The proposed renovations and a new play park will enhance the look of the site. The proposals intend to remove the unsightly and dangerous construction around the original Victorian barrack accommodation. New chalets would be on the adjacent access road and would match existing chalets on the site. The work would take place within the existing grounds and would not impact on nearby wildlife. Additional car parking, including 3 disabled access spaces, will also be added to the site. The plans are available for comments online until November the 23rd.
Campaign to save under threat pubs. Isle of Wight campaigners are gearing up to fight for the island's pubs. A public meeting will be held at the Globe Cows at 5 p.m. next Saturday, November the 17th, to explain why so many pubs are under threat and what can be done about it. The meeting has been organised by the Forum of Private Business to tackle what it describes as the unprecedented number of pub closures on the island. The King Lud Ride was the latest to close its doors last month, shortly after the New Inn Shalfleet. Meanwhile, new leaseholders are set to take on the Pierview Cows and the Castle in Newport. Forum member, campaigner and licensee Dave Mountford said the pub's code, the legislation governing the relationship between pubs and the companies which own them, had failed. Under the tied tenancy model, campaigners have accused pub-owning businesses of exploiting publicans by forcing them to buy beer at sky-high prices. The regional branch of the Campaign for Real Ale, CAMRA, will also be meeting on the same day at 12:30 at the Anchor Cows. Regional Director Nigel Jones said he wanted to involve Isle of Wight residents in the fight against pub closures. Last Tuesday, CAMRA members from around the country travelled to Westminster to take part in a national day of action and lobby their MPs, asking for their support ahead of a review of the pub's code next year. Representing the Isle of Wight were Mike Locke and Malcolm Watson, who met MP Bob Seeley to raise concerns about the impact of pub closures on the island community. They said the EI Group, formerly Enterprise Inns, was the single biggest pub company on the island, owning 22% of all pubs, and had a responsibility not to abuse its dominant position. However, speaking to the county press following the King Lud closure, the EI Group said while it was true publicans paid more for their beer, they also paid less in rent than they would on the open market. A spokesman said tenants were not forced to sign leases or agree terms against their will, and said the company had invested £75,000 in Isle of Wight pubs in the past 3 years. Mr. Seeley has agreed to support campaigners and will attend next week's meetings.
And it's goodbye for this week from Brian.
And also from Chris.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen.
And I'm Madeleine.
And we'll be reading the letters and features pages of the county press for you. This week, starting with a letter.
And this letter is from Brian Greening of Newport, and it's the parking and floating bridge fiasco. I read our Tory-controlled council is soon to introduce charges for parking almost anywhere within the town, thereby driving most motorists into supermarket car parks or, at worst, refusing to come into Newport to do their shopping. Soon Node Hill will resemble Dodge City, with tumbleweed blowing along its length of, by then, empty shops. I note too yet another letter criticising the council leader and his political sidekick over their handling of the floating bridge fiasco. If our council was a private enterprise, they both would have been sacked months ago. The Egyptians built pyramids, and Noah supposedly an ark, but our illustrious leaders cannot solve the mystery of managing a regular service across that short stretch of water. Come back, John Samuel Wight, you know it makes sense.
And now a letter from Richard Steele of Shorewell, headlined Dystopia. I have written to our MP Bob Seeley to see if he can prevent what seems to be yet another act of vandalism perpetrated by the Isle of Wight Council. I refer to the committee report by the Council Cabinet recommending the closure of the Local Area Coordination Scheme, which was started on the island in 2015. Since that time, the scheme has helped hundreds of people in need and reduced the demand on other services. Without this scheme, the people currently supported will either be abandoned or impose a greater burden on health and social care. The report, which aims to farm out care to voluntary organisations such as Age UK, is flawed. Indeed, it starts out with a conclusion and provides no evidence to support it. Farmed out care is getting a justifiable bad reputation at the moment. Bob Seeley should visit our place at the West Wight Sports and Community Centre, itself under threat due to withdrawal of council funding, where many people with diverse needs are helped. There is also the fact that the current care coordinators will lose their jobs. We are told austerity is over, but the Conservative Party on the island remains the nasty party, dragging the island back into some Dickensian dystopia.
And another letter about parking. Long-term pain. The proposed introduction of parking charges in Union Street Ryde may increase income for the council in the short term, but at what cost? The present 1-hour parking restriction gives island residents and visitors sufficient time to use the shops and cafes, but ensures turnover, so parking spaces are normally available. Introduction of parking charges will result in fewer people using local shops, which means they may no longer be viable and have to close. Does the council really want a series of empty and shuttered shops in Union Street? Not to mention the loss of business rates. These proposals might produce a short-term gain, but the result will be long-term pain.
And now a letter from Rosalind Groves of Ryde, headlined Terrible Loss. Although we keep hearing about and experiencing cuts in the Isle of Wight Council's budget, Here in Ryde we are extremely fortunate we still have our library, with everything the expert, welcoming and hard-working staff provide for us there. I want to make sure as many people as possible are aware of the excellent First World War poppy exhibition there, on until next Friday, November the 16th. It is thorough and well presented in every way. But for me the most striking part was the hundreds of paper poppies displayed around the walls and shelves, each one with the name and age of a soldier, most in their 20s or even their teens, who fought and were killed during that war. There is one poppy for each soldier who died from the Ryde area, more than 600 young men. It is easy to read a number like that and pass it over quickly, without visualising any details behind each individual experience. But I found seeing each one, named and with a few family details provided in the folders, made a big impact, an emotional insight into the tragedy and waste of so many young people living and dying in those circumstances, as well as the lifelong grief of their families. It made me think that yes, we moan about Brexit and parking and taxes and prices, understandably, but at least most of us in Ryde are not living with the fear and dread of hearing our children have been killed on a battlefield in France. Thank you to Ryde Library for giving me that perspective.
From Rita Boffin in Knighton. Double standards, County Press. The County Press is hereby accused of double standards. On one hand, at their peril, reporters dare not criticise any theatrical production other than venture a bland "few lines were lost, but as this was the first night," etc., etc. Reporter John Moreno, beware. On the other hand, that quite damning write-up on Pulse, the only vegan restaurant on the island, although unbelievably savage, nonetheless passed muster. Why the different standards? Well, the County Press doesn't want to antagonise large numbers of its readers, many of whom tread the boards, and thereby lose revenue, whereas the only ones affected by the report on Pulse would be the proprietor, the chef, and of course prospective clients. However, for me at least, it has backfired, and I am now determined to try out this soggy menu for myself. But no report, unless the verdict is overwhelmingly complimentary. Would-be diners, watch this space. And there's an editor's footnote. The restaurant is a professional commercial enterprise, whereas most Isle of Wight theatres reviewed by the County Press is put on by amateurs for fun, and reviewers try not to be cruel.
And now a letter from Penelope Baker of Sandown, headlined "Squirrel Threat." About plans to introduce eagles on Culver Cliff. Culver Cliff is near Los Altos Park, where recently I and others have seen squirrels. Culver Cliff is not noted for its forestry, but is near to breeding marshes, with many small birds vulnerable to birds of prey. Parkhurst Forest is testament to the Forestry Commission's negative interest in wildlife. When visited, there was no apparent squirrel food, or indeed notable wildlife apparent. The red squirrel was reported to be in the forest years ago. Does the Forestry Commission see our furry red friend as compatible with its commercial interests? Ecology requires an holistic approach. A wildlife foundation aiming to introduce eagles here appears to be a threat rather than protective.
From Dr. Alistair Brooks, British Red Cross Heritage Manager in London. On Sunday, November the 11th, the people of the UK will commemorate the centenary of the end of the First World War. The British Red Cross has a near 150-year history of supporting people in the UK during times of crisis, and between 1914 and 1918, more than 90,000 people volunteered for the organisation, working as voluntary aid detachments, or VADs, in auxiliary hospitals at home and overseas. The vast majority of First World War volunteers were ordinary women and men who cared for the wounded and sick, drove ambulances and acted as clerks, cooks and storekeepers. They gave dedicated, compassionate and skilled humanitarian service at a time of national crisis, and the role of women during the war in particular led to significant social change with women, driven by their war experiences, seeking greater opportunities in the workplace and securing the same voting rights as men in 1928. Given the sheer number of people who volunteered as VADs during the First World War, it seems likely that many county press readers will have ancestors who gave service during the conflict. And today, thanks to the popularity of genealogical websites and TV programmes such as Who Do You Think You Are?, many are keen to trace their family trees and better understand the lives and wartime roles of their ancestors. Traditionally, much of that focus has been on the men who served and in hundreds of thousands of cases lost their lives on the front line. Now, however, readers can use our new online VAD database to find out if their ancestors, especially women relatives, performed a civilian role during the war. Searchable by name, location and occupation, the database includes service records and, in some cases, photographs. Anyone can access the website at www.vad.redcross.org.uk and potentially discover new facets to their family history.
And now the looking back column, starting with 100 years ago, on November the 9th, 1918, and writing to his mother, a young Newport officer wrote humorously of the censorship of his letters. He wrote, "I don't want to get into trouble, so I shall merely tell you I am well and I am here. To get from there to here, I proceeded along a route of which I may not speak, in a direction of which I may not tell, and by means of a transportation which it is perhaps better not to mention. A steam wagon steersman was crushed to death while on a steam wagon in Newport. John Henry Bignell, who was 25, was sitting on the side of the wagon when the engine started moving too fast. The wagon rushed towards a building and the brakes failed."
75 years ago, on November the 13th, 1943, a parachutist prisoner of war in Italy arrived home on the Isle of Wight. D.J. Miller, son of Mrs. E. Miller of Sandown, escaped from the prison and reached the island after 32 days and travelling more than 300 miles. He said during his imprisonment he met several island men. The Reverend and Mrs. E. Royds of St. John's Vicarage, Ryde, received word a German-controlled radio station at Calais had broadcast a message from one of their two prisoner-of-war sons. The message from Wilfrid Royds read, "Safe and well in Bavaria. Don't worry. Love." Wilfrid was the vicar's eldest son and was captured 2 years before.
And 50 years ago, on November the 2nd, 1968, hundreds of good vehicle owners were affected by new legislation under the Ministry of Transport's Road Safety Act. Unless drivers took immediate action to ensure their vehicles were up to ministry standards, they were liable to have their lorries banned from the roads. About 40% of vehicles tested on the island were defective. A Wroxall nurse received an MBE at Buckingham Palace. Edith Mary Bunce was trained at the Royal Free Hospital and became a state-registered nurse. She was then appointed to the South of the Island Nursing Association, for which she received the honour.
25 years ago, on November the 5th, 1993. With just 7 weeks to Christmas, almost 1/6 of the workforce at Westland Aerospace, the Isle of Wight's largest employer, was set to lose their jobs. Rumours of staff cuts had been rife at the factory, and the firm announced 264 redundancies. The unions accepted the 15% job loss was inevitable. A prisoner escaped from Camp Hill jail just weeks after another went missing. Kevin Fitzmaurice, who was serving 3 years for burglary, was found to be missing at the evening roll check. 2 weeks before, Geoffrey Harrison went missing after he was given a day's parole to make his own way to Ford Open Prison in Sussex.
And 10 years ago, on November the 7th, 2008, a rallying call was issued to islanders to speak up or face losing the Yarmouth to Lymington ferry. There were concerns the fierce negativity from opponents to Wight Link's new ferries would lead to the axing of the route. Wight Link said if it could not use its specially ordered new ferries, there would be no service. And open warfare broke out between the island's top 2 politicians over a Standard Board for England investigation into Isle of Wight councillors. Tory MP Andrew Turner described the investigation as reprehensible and said the councillors accused were at worst guilty of an error of judgment. The Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor David Pugh, accused him of seeking a whitewash.
And now some Wight memories. Letters from the trenches to the Isle of Wight. Sweethearts Bob Brimson and Mabs Attrill exchanged letters during the First World War. As the nation marks the centenary of the end of that war, Alan Stroud tells the story of one man's experience of life in the trenches through the letters he wrote. This week marks the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. For most of us it is something we read about in history books, but not for Richard Brimson of Newport, because through his grandparents he has a direct and very personal link to the war. His grandfather, Gordon Brimson, known in the family as Bob, joined up within 2 weeks of war being declared in 1914 and spent the next 5 years in the Royal Engineers. From the trenches of the Somme, he wrote to his family back in Newport, and in particular to his fiancée, Mabel Attrill, Mabs. In turn, they wrote back to Bob. Luckily, someone in the family all those years ago decided to keep the letters, and for 100 years more than 400 of them lay hidden in the family home until they were discovered 3 years ago and were passed then to Richard. The letters make compelling reading. They are full of the human minutiae and detail that war histories rarely cover, and they provide an extraordinary glimpse into how an ordinary island family coped with one of their own serving in the trenches. Bob began his training in August 1914 in barracks at Gillingham, Kent. Back home, Mabs was working in the family pub, the Bedford, on the Mall at Newport, from where she would write to Bob. My dearest boy, Ben Sykes, Frenchy Flood and Mr. Chaplin were in last night. They were wedged up in a corner while a crowd of soldiers took possession of the rest of the room. If it wasn't for the soldiers, we should have scarcely any trade at all. We were worried to death with regimental police last night. They have had a lot of trouble with soldiers this week, and we have had a new order. 9 o'clock every night we have to close. There is a rush and scramble from 6:30 until 9 every evening now, and we mustn't serve any soldiers after 8 o'clock. They must be out of the pubs by 5 to 8 unless they have a pass. If any are caught without passes, the pub is to be put out of bounds. Bob was posted to France, eventually ending up in the Somme area. Within months, the reality of war began to reach the island. In February 1915, Bob's younger sister Kath wrote, "I suppose Mabel has told you about poor old George Urry. It was Saturday morning when Mrs. Urry came staggering round here. She could hardly stand, with a letter in her hand from his sergeant major to say George had been shot through the head and died instantly. She made Mother read it to her, poor woman. She was dreadfully upset. He had been so lucky all through up until now."
Parcels from home became very important to men at the front. On February 19, 1916, Bob wrote to Kath, "You don't know how I look forward to a parcel. I have almost forgotten the taste of Mother's cake, and yours as well. I wish I had some now. We had torrents of rain last night. I was wet through, the rain running down into my boots. I was lying in bed this morning when the Germans started shelling. They passed over our heads like an express train. I thought if one happened to drop through the roof, how nice it would be to snuff it in bed, comfortable." 6 weeks later, spring reached the muddy battlefields. "Dear Mabs, we are having the most beautiful weather out here. The trees are beginning to look green. Sometimes when the guns stop firing, you would hardly believe there was a war on. Everything is so peaceful and quiet, and the larks are singing too. But if you had been round this way last night, you would have thought all hell had been let loose. Such an awful bombardment on both sides. It was a proper stream of fire." A letter to Mabs in May 1916 returned to the subject of food. "Dear Mabs, I received the parcel all right, thanks very much. It was a treat to get such a lovely load, and fresh butter and the eggs. I can tell you I had some good feeds. We have been awfully short of food lately." In August 1916, Bob wrote to his parents, "I suppose there will be a time when this affair will come to an end. We get fed up at times, especially the sights we've seen lately." Perhaps the letter from Mabs a few days later lifted his spirits a little. "Mother and Doris and I went to the pictures. It was all very nice until the interval. Then someone came to sing. Well, she warbled, 'Come sing to me,' and at the very first line Doris groaned out, 'Oh, good Lord.' In fact, we all groaned, and there was various not complimentary remarks passed by us. I couldn't put up with it, so I stuffed my fingers in my ears. There was a person sitting next to Doris who kept glaring at us. We had a great shock when, after the critter had stopped singing, this woman went out with her. It was her daughter. Bob survived the war and returned to Newport. He and Mabs were married in 1920 and set up home in Trafalgar Road in Newport. They were there until they died. Bob in 1970, aged 85, and Mabs in 1982, aged 88. A collection of the letters, From Newport to the Somme, by Alan Stroud and Richard Brimson, is available from Island bookshops and is priced at £12.95.
And some more Wight memories. Island aviator remembered. The Wight Aviation Museum has traced the story of one of the island's little-known First World War aviation heroes, a fearless young airman from Whippingham. Through research into the 22 Squadron Royal Flying Corps and its famous aces of the First World War who stemmed German advances in the air, the story of a gallant officer from the Isle of Wight was uncovered. After extensive investigation across the UK, North America and South Africa, Wight Aviation Museum's John Kenyon, in partnership with Gray and Drucker's Commonwealth Family History Research, managed to trace surviving members of the Whippingham aviators family and discovered the untold history of the officer who lost in action 100 years ago, just 45 days before the war ended. The 21-year-old navigator, Second Lieutenant Clifford John Tolman, was a talented airman from Alveston Manor Farm, Whippingham, and was lost in action over the trenches on the Western Front on September the 27th, 1918. Born on November the 5th, 1896, Clifford John Tolman and his sister went to school in Whippingham, and he later served as a gunner in the Royal Field Artillery, Hampshire Yeomanry Regiment No. 1351, of which the Isle of Wight Rifles is part. He was awarded the Military Medal for an act of bravery in the field and devotion to duty while under fire. No doubt this was why he transferred to the Royal Flying Corps in March 1918. He was soon in action over the trenches on the Western Front, flying with his pilot in Bristol fighter biplanes. He went on to become a First World War air ace, having destroyed 8 enemy aircraft in the air. Lieutenant Tolman was only 21 on that fateful day when he flew with Flight Commander Captain Samuel Frederick Thompson, the UK's leading Bristol fighter air ace with 30 victories, on their final mission in a Bristol F-2B fighter. It is understood they were shot down by Oberleutnant Otto Schmidt of German Jaster 5 Squadron. Having no known grave, they are commemorated at the Arras Flying Services Memorial, along with 1,000 airmen who lost their lives in the First World War on the Western Front. The first ever memorial service for Lieutenant Tolman was held at St Mildred's Church, Whippingham. Family members, the Royal British Legion, representatives from the Royal Air Force Association, air cadets, members of Wight Aviation Museum, and students from nearby Priory School were in attendance. A Spitfire flew over the church as the service concluded. Lieutenant Tolman's nephew and niece, Peter Tolman Warren and Anne Tolman Cook, were tracked down by Graham Drucker of Isle of Wight-based Commonwealth Family History Research and were invited to the memorial service. In the near future, the Wight Aviation Museum will open to the public a full display on the history of Clifford John Tolman and other island aviation heroes. The museum is currently researching the first ever Isle of Wight Aviation Roll of Honour of all those aviators lost from 1910 until the present day. Anyone with any information, stories or memorabilia that can assist the exhibition are asked to contact Wight Aviation Museum on 872 167 or Commonwealth Family History Research on 856 381.
And now the My View column, the first of which is written by Rebecca Roncaroni and is headlined, "Should Voting Be Made Compulsory?" In the past weeks, many islanders have been angry with the Isle of Wight Council elected last year. Complaints include, and are not limited to, cuts to services for our most vulnerable, cuts to the fire service, the implementation and sustainability plan that frankly not many of us have a clue about, but know it will lead to bad things, because these things always do. Complaints are made about so-called consultations, because it is widely felt these are a pointless box-ticking exercise given as a sop with the decision already made behind closed doors. I get that. As someone who has worked as a nurse for both the NHS and social services, I have witnessed firsthand how underfunded services can have a devastating impact on the most vulnerable in our society. Children and young people in care, the elderly, the disabled, the mentally ill, the carers. The people working within ever-shrinking services dealing with heartbreaking situations every single day. One example. When I worked as a community psychiatric nurse, suddenly all carers were entitled to have a carers assessment. At first I thought that was great. Finally, carers were going to get some support with what, at times, can be the hardest job in the world. Then I realised that nothing happened with the assessments unless there was a critical acute need, i.e. someone was in imminent danger of serious injury or death. A carer could be assessed as needing weekly respite, but there were no resources. They would be filed under unmet need and perhaps used for auditing purposes at some time. It was soul destroying, especially for the carers, but also on the workers carrying out this pointless exercise. That is just a tiny example of the unseen cruelties those who need help are subjected to when we don't care enough to fight for the services we need. The Isle of Wight is one of the poorest wards in the country. With this in mind, I am mystified as to why people don't use their democratic right to vote. What has happened between 1981, when the turnout was 70%, and 2017, when the turnout was just over 35%? When I was canvassing for the Wooten seat last year, I knocked on more than 1,700 doors. I met many lovely people who said, "I don't vote, they're all the same. What's the point? I don't do politics." How many of those are angry about how useless this council seemed to be at advocating for the islanders who elected them? Well, to be honest, tough. If you don't engage in the process, you don't get to moan about the result. Those who don't vote have as much influence on who wins as those who do put their crosses on the ballot paper. The problem is the non-voter's role is a passive, negative, whatever role, which ultimately impacts on everyone. People lost their seats in the elections by tiny margins. The Binstead incumbent lost by 2 votes. Those votes counted. They all count. Even spoiled ballot papers communicate protest. Maybe it's time we made voting compulsory. Maybe if people had to vote, we would have government at central and local level that reflected the views and needs of those who elected them, as opposed to what we have now, government elected by a minority of the population.
From Malcolm Mime, Remembrance for the Non-Religious. This Sunday is Armistice Day, or Remembrance Day as it is now more commonly referred to, and it isn't any old Remembrance Day this year. It is the 100th such day and marks 100 years since the ending of the First World War, which occurred at 11 a.m. on Monday, November the 11th, 1918. At 11 a.m. this Sunday, we will all fall silent for 2 minutes in remembrance of all those who have died in conflict and also those left behind, or will we? No doubt the vast majority of those aged 60 plus will make a point of spending 2 minutes in silence, but in recent years fewer and fewer people are bothering to show their respects, particularly those under the age of 60. I have to admit last year was the first time in many years that I bothered to observe the silence. And it wasn't because I'd made a purposeful point of doing so, it was because everyone in Fratton Park was doing it en masse prior to the kick-off. And if I'm honest, I didn't spend the 2 minutes thinking of past war conflicts. I was contemplating who might score the first goal. So why is it so many of us no longer bother with Remembrance Day? I believe there are 2 main reasons. The first reason is religion. Since the Second World War, we don't just have Remembrance Day, but we have Remembrance Sunday as well, which is very much a church-run event. The original Armistice Day was a secular ceremony, and indeed the cenotaph in London was purposely not inscribed with any reference to God, as not all the war dead were Christians. But ever since the church got involved, Remembrance Sunday, which is always the second Sunday in November, pushed Remembrance Day itself into the background. The official laying of the wreaths at the cenotaph happens on Remembrance Sunday and not on Remembrance Day, and is followed by a Christian service. In the past, when the majority of the UK held an Anglican belief, this wasn't a problem, but now that just 17% of the country are Anglican and 53% have no faith at all, the religious-based Remembrance Sunday has become outdated. This year, for the first time ever, the non-religious group Humanists UK have been invited to attend the National Service of Remembrance at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday. So perhaps the authorities are at last waking up to the fact Remembrance Sunday should be as much a day for the vast non-Anglican masses as it is for the few. Lack of interest in the religiously embroiled Remembrance Sunday doesn't excuse why I and others don't pay our respects on Remembrance Day, where tradition dictates people stand in a public space and observe the 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. before continuing with their daily routine. The only reason I can give for not bothering is because I haven't suffered personal loss from a war. I have no one in particular to remember, and so therefore I don't have enough reason to make the effort. Yes, we owe a debt to those who died in the 2 world wars, but the last World War ended 73 years ago, so it is too far away in history for the current generation to relate to. The two world wars are just as distant to the youth of today as the Battle of Trafalgar. Perhaps it is time for the religious-based Remembrance Sunday to be confined to the Anglican churches, and let Remembrance Day come back into the fore. The National Service of Remembrance could be a non-religious service, held not on a Sunday, but at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, just as it was in the beginning. The silence at Fratton Park was actually for 1 minute and not 2. As a wag in the pub said after the game, those in authority probably thought that Pompey fans couldn't keep quiet for longer than 60 seconds, before adding, it would have been fine at Southampton, where the fans are quiet for 90 minutes.
And now the Behind the News column by David Newby, headlined Queen's Woman on the Island. As the first female Lord Lieutenant of the Isle of Wight, its former High Sheriff, Susie Sheldon, has one unexpected dilemma. What on earth to wear on official duties? It's not that her soon-to-be predecessor, Major General Sir Martin Wight, has ever faced the same problem. As a former military man, he could always put on the ceremonial uniform if he wished, or for a lounge suit for a less formal occasion. However, Susie, now 60, does not have a military background, and the garb of the High Sheriff, which women incumbents of that position adapted in the past, does not really fit with her new role. She laughed as she described the problem to the county press. It's very interesting. Lord Lieutenants don't get their own uniforms. I have no military background at all. For men, you wear a suit or chinos and a blazer with a tie. For ladies, well, it's a bit more complicated. For Susie, who, along with her husband Jamie, runs King's Manor Farm just outside of Yarmouth, the role of Lord Lieutenant seems like a natural fit, dare we say it, like the fit of a well-cut suit. She was born in Surrey but moved to the island in 1994 with Jamie. As well as running the farm, she has worked running holiday lets and is a former master of the Isle of Wight hunt. She is also keen on music and sport, although she confesses she can't play an instrument. Jamie, however, can play the piano. The couple have 3 grown-up children, Charles, Sophie and Richard. She was appointed as one of the 20 Deputy Lord Lieutenants to the island in 2012, following her stint as High Sheriff, but only realised she was in the running for the top job in September, when someone from the Cabinet Office came along and asked her about other candidates and what she thought she could bring to the role if she got it herself. She said, "I'm a great believer in women's rights. At the moment, around 40% of Lord Lieutenants in the UK are women. For a very traditional organisation, that is quite impressive." Much to Susie's surprise, about a month ago, a letter arrived from the Prime Minister, Theresa May. It told her she had been selected for the job. She said, it was a very simple letter. It said, "Are you prepared to have your name put forward for the role to the Queen?"
The decision to accept was not easy. After all, it would entail her being in the job for the next 15 years. Lord Lieutenants retire aged 75. She said, "I thought long and hard about it. Martin has been the most amazing Lord Lieutenant. It is a very big commitment. Jamie and I sat down and talked about it for a long time. It is a huge honour, but you do have to think about it. Martin is very straightforward. I ask advice from him all the time, and will continue to do so. The official role of the Lord Lieutenant is to be the Queen's representative on the Isle of Wight. It means Susie will be presenting honours such as the British Empire Medal and other awards to those who have been recognised by the Queen and can't, for one reason or another, make the trip to London. Then there are the various awards, including the Queen's Awards for Voluntary Service and Enterprise, which are presented by the Lord Lieutenant on the island. Of course, there is also the chance the Queen may pay a visit to the island, in which case it is up to Susie and her team to make sure her time on the Isle of Wight runs as smoothly as possible. Susie said, "If by any chance I leave the country for a length of time, I have to make sure somebody is here who could act as the Queen's representative in my absence. She came here for her Jubilee. It would be lovely for the Isle of Wight if she came here again. It is very daunting. It is a very big job and a very big responsibility. For Susie, one of the big pluses of her new job is getting to meet all sorts of people on the island. I learned so much about the island when I was High Sheriff. There's also the question of running the farm. Susie is already a very busy person. I'm going to have to be very efficient. I have a period of about 4 months to get my life organised. However, we have great staff here and they are all thrilled. I am very lucky." And her hopes for her period as Lord Lieutenant? "I suppose it is the same as what I learned when I was High Sheriff. You are not important, it is the office that is important. I hope to leave the role as well respected as it is now. That means a lot."
And now news of what's on over the coming week or so. I'm starting with news of Cowes Christmas Fair 2018 at Cowes Yacht Haven, which is on Saturday 17th and Sunday 18th of November from 10:30am to 4:30pm, which is free entry using Park and Ride to avoid parking problems.
The salacious story of Appledurcombe's Lady Worsley and her many lovers is a famous one. Less well known, however, is her husband's passion for collecting art and antiques. Sir Richard was certainly a connoisseur of beautiful things. Indeed, he probably saw his wife, Lady Seymour Worsley, who was hauled into court after running off with one of her lovers, as an attractive addition to his collection. Born at Appledurcombe House, Wroxall in 1751, he filled it with treasures including Renaissance paintings and artefacts from the Parthenon, pocketed during one of his numerous expeditions. The Programme Secretary of the Art Society Isle of Wight, Dr. Lynn Beck, will give a lecture at Key Arts on Thursday evening about Sir Richard's passion for art and antiquities. A Master in Fine Art valuation with a doctorate in the cultural history of the island, Dr. Beck will reveal how Sir Richard acquired his vast collection and, intriguingly, what became of it. Doors open at 6:30pm for supper and drinks. The lecture starts at 8pm. Tickets are available on the door.
And coffee morning will be held at St Mildred's Church Centre, Whippingham, on Wednesday from 10am to noon. And Cowes Heritage Autumn Exhibition continues daily until Sunday 10am to 4pm at the Regatta Office, Bath Road, Cowes. The first 2 weeks of the exhibition attracted almost 700 visitors to view photos of life and events in the Cowes area, which formed part of the collection of the late Charles Taylor, a local historian. There's free admission. A talk by Terry Darnbrook about her life as the daughter of a Needles lighthouse keeper will take place on Tuesday at the Royal Ocean Racing Club in Cowes at 10:30am. Organised by the Cowes Lifeboat Guild, entry will cost £4, including coffee and cake, and proceeds will go to the RNLI. And the Elephant Club, a free group activity designed to exercise your memory muscles, is held in the Garden Room at All Saints Church, Gurnard, from 2pm to 4pm on Thursday. It's fun, gentle, caring, and there will be tea and biscuits.
And dates for your diary for Mountbatten Hospice. Their Christmas fair is on the 25th of November from 10 till 4. There'll be stalls, music and a Christmas cafe. And Bembridge Gift Fair on the 30th of November, 5 till 8pm, and the 1st of December, 10am till 3pm, and that's at Bembridge Yacht Club. There's a Santa Dash on the 2nd of December at 11 a.m. from Ryde Beachfront. Sign up to run, jog or walk the 5k. Light Up a Life, 2nd of December at 4 o'clock at the Mountbatten Hospice. Dedicate a light on our tree. Concert series Atticus on the 6th of December at 7:30 p.m. at the hospice. And don't forget to join us for our regular events, including 6 p.m. every Wednesday, Mountbatten Community Choir, all welcome at the John Cheverton Centre. For full information about tickets and event details, visit www.mountbatten.org.uk.
And that's all we have time for this week, so it's goodbye from me, Stephen.
And goodbye from Madeline. November 2018, Sight for Wight, Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, newsletter. Millbrook House, 137 Carisbrook Road, Newport, Isle of Wight, PO 301DD, 01983 522205. Read by Linda, Madeline and Howard.
A message from the chairman, Paul Rutherford. It will soon be Christmas. Where does the time go? In the August newsletter, I mentioned a couple of events that Sight for Wight had a presence at. Following on from those events, we attended the Chale Show on August 4th and 5th, Jack Up the 80s on August 11th and 12th, and the Wolverton Show on September 1st and 2nd. Many thanks to Miriam, our CEO, and her partner who came over from the mainland to help man our stall at two of the shows. The Chale Show and the Wolverton Show were very successful in showing the support available and the activities offered by Sight for Wight. Unfortunately, Jack Up the 80s was a bit of a washout all round as the weather took a wet and windy turn. A Low Vision Day was held at Millbrook House on September 19th, which was very well attended with a lot of positive feedback. On October 1st, a climbing event was held at Freshwater for our members, which Ruth Hollingshead attended. Her review will be further in this newsletter. At this time of writing, there are 3 other activities in progress. On Friday, 5th of October, a yoga session is being held at Millbrook House. We're visiting the Isle of Wight Cheese Company on 15th of October, and there'll be a quiz at the Waverley Pub on 8th of November. I hope all 3 events generate a lot of interest. Without dedicated staff and volunteers, none of these activities would be available to our members, so many thanks to them. As always, please cajole friends and family to volunteer, if only for a few hours a week. Hopefully I'll meet some of you at some of our activities.
And now a message from the CEO, Miriam Tong. The early autumn has been so glorious it's difficult to accept that, by the time you receive this copy, many of us will be involved in planning and preparing Christmas celebrations and activities. Member services. Work continues with plans and ideas generated by the member survey carried out last year, and in this issue there are reports and pictures from a number of recent activities that have taken place, including wall climbing, yoga, and cheese tasting. An area of interest identified by many members who participated in the 2017 survey was keeping abreast of technology. In such a rapidly developing area, there is, unsurprisingly, a growth in expensive specialist equipment and software designed specifically for the VI community. However, there is equally a growing range of free or low-cost software and apps that can be used on a whole range of laptops, tablets and smartphones to assist with myriad tasks. Following on from some discussion at the previous members' forum, it was determined that on the day of the October forum meeting, we would hold a technology discussion to simply identify the range of software and apps that members currently use. We hope to produce a document which could be helpful to other members, identifying the uses, pros and cons, together with approximate costs associated with the technology, software or apps identified. Once compiled, a summary of this document can be included in the next quarterly newsletter due in February 2019. It's also hoped that from the October technology discussion, a list of technological tasks members would be interested in receiving further guidance with might be produced. Using some of the Bonnie Harris Activities Fund legacy money, Sight for Wight will then arrange some tailored training sessions to be delivered with expert support from the Age UK Digital Inclusion Team, who have indicated their willingness to work with us. Returning to thoughts of Christmas, I look forward to welcoming members to the afternoon of mulled wine and mince pies, detailed later in the newsletter, when we will be able to enjoy musical entertainment from music craft saxophonist Marie Smith.
Fundraising, income generation and legacies. We are pleased to report some good news with regard to recent fundraising endeavours and following the recent receipt of a generous legacy, all reported more fully by our finance officer later in the newsletter. I am also delighted to report that Dress for Less, the dress agency and boutique in St James Street, established to provide revenue support to the charity, is trading very successfully. My congratulations go to the retail manager and all the wonderful volunteers who continue to support this venture. Definitely worth a visit for anyone seeking a special dress for the party season or a new lady's outfit at a fantastic price. Plans are well underway for the annual story writing competition, our major fundraising event that culminates on Monday the 17th of December with the presentation of awards at an evening celebration. The theme this year is The Magic of Christmas, and the event certainly promises to be truly magical. I very much hope that many of our members, volunteers and supporters will join us. Again, you will find all the details reported later by our marketing, communications and fundraising manager. Whether or not you are able to join us on the evening of the 17th of December, I would ask you to support us with the purchase of raffle tickets for our major annual raffle, which will be drawn during the short story writing competition award celebration. Where you have indicated willingness to accept raffle tickets for sale, you will find them enclosed with this newsletter. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you would like further tickets sending out to you. We aim to exceed the £1,000 fundraising target set for the raffle this year.
Volunteers and volunteering. As always, sincere thanks go to all those who enable and support the delivery of Sight for Wight services and activities with a gift of their time. The volunteer manager and I are planning some training dates with 4 half-day sessions covering safeguarding, health and safety awareness, food hygiene awareness and emergency first aid training. Places on these programmes will be limited, so we welcome early responses from those interested. Once finalised, details with outlined programmes will be emailed to all volunteers. Interest in the My Guide Sighted Guide programme is steadily building, so, in conjunction with the Member Services Manager, we will also be advertising some further training dates to participate in this. If on no other occasion, I look forward to seeing many of our volunteers at the final volunteer team update of 2018 to enjoy mulled wine, music and mince pies on Tuesday the 11th of December. As usual for such get-togethers, formal RSVP invitations will be issued.
Governance. Our search for new trustees continues. In particular, we are seeking those with large-scale financial experience, legal expertise and expertise in charity governance. If anyone would like more information about the role and responsibilities of becoming a trustee or has suggestions for suitably experienced individuals who might be approached, please make contact. Our trustee members are currently somewhat depleted. With regret, Dr. Emma Sainsbury recently decided to step down due to her personal circumstances. A number of you may have had the pleasure of meeting Emma when she delivered some excellent safeguarding training to volunteers last year. Her professionalism and expertise will be missed. Sadly, we're also temporarily missing long-serving trustee-treasurer John Lockley, as he takes time out for a couple of months because of poor health. I'm sure I speak for all in wishing John a speedy return to good health. At the August meeting of trustees, following the successful conclusion of the Employment Tribunal process, which heard in favour of the charity, it was unanimously approved that our solicitors be requested to write to the former employee concerned, seeking some redress in respect of the historic accidental overpayment of salary.
Millbrook House Working Party members. The first meeting of the Working Party took place on Tuesday the 11th of September to review the use and future of Millbrook House, comprising a trustee, the CEO, member services manager, VI finance officer and 3 VI members. The group agreed the proposed terms of reference and enjoyed a productive meeting with participants variously agreeing to undertake further research, looking at possible venues and possible alternative providers of services and activities ahead of the next meeting scheduled for the 20th of November. The Working Party will gather information to present a report for trustees to be deliberated at the February 2019 meeting. Trusting this newsletter again provides an interesting read and useful insight into our plans over the coming months. I very much hope that I will have the opportunity to wish many of you the compliments of the season in person at one or more of many events we have scheduled before the end of the year. I'm trying very hard to avoid saying Merry Christmas just yet, as I write this piece at the end of the first week in October. With warmest wishes to you all, Miriam Tong, Chief Executive, IWSB.
Fashion Focus Group. This is an article submitted by Master's Research student Faye from the University of Portsmouth. Hello, my name is Faye. I'm writing a paper on disability in clothing, analysing the issues that occur when choosing clothes and wearing them. This will then become project-focused on visual impairment, looking at possible issues and plausible solutions. My reason for choosing this subject is my mum, who suffered with MS. By the end of her life she was bedbound. She still wanted to be glamorous, but different complications made that difficult, so this project is close to my heart. To begin with, I'm trying to create a focus group based on the Isle of Wight to discuss fashion and clothing. It will be an informal discussion over coffee and cake, with hopefully lots of laughter. If you're nervous about coming along, please feel free to bring a friend or family member, as I'm aiming to create a very relaxed environment. Thank you for your time, and I hope to meet some of you at the focus group. Our trustee, Ruth Hollingshead, is Faye's point of contact at Sight for Wight. If you'd like to register interest in taking part in Faye's Fashion and Clothing Focus Group, please contact the Society on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk. They will then pass your details on to Ruth.
News from Finance. Sight for Wight collection boxes. We're delighted to confirm Sue Young has now taken over the management of our collection boxes. We have collected just under £1,250 this quarter, including £441 from Isle of Wight Bowling men's and £330 from Ride Optician and Hearing Care. A huge thank you to all our collection box holders, including Boots, Freshwater, Morrison's, the Cooperative, Ultra Stores Carisbrook, and to our own volunteers and members who hold individual boxes in their homes. We've also received just over £275 in individuals' donations and monies raised in our Waverley Quiz Night and Waverley Raffle. Also a special thank you to members for their suggestions of where we can place new ones. If you have any more ideas as to where they can be placed, or if you would like one yourself, please call Lisa on 522205. Pop in or email her on finance@iwsb.org.uk.
Legacy giving. During the past months, we have received £57,400 in bequests from Isle of Wight residents who have shown us support with gifts in their wills. Such legacies form a very important source of funding for us. As an independent island charity, we receive no statutory funding at all, and with a growing number of island residents affected by sight loss, such gifts help ensure we remain able to deliver support and services. Our survey of members' needs last year confirmed how important these are to so many members. Whether in the form of this quarterly newsletter, the weekly talking news, the enjoyment of audiobooks loaned from the library, the opportunity to participate in one of our regular coffee mornings with low vision equipment displayed, enjoyment of the various regular social groups hosted at Millbrook House and at venues across the island, or the opportunity to enjoy occasional one-off activities and outings, the range and number of services supported by Sight for Wight will only continue to evolve to best members' needs with such continuing support. For further information on making a gift to us in your will, we enclose with this newsletter a leaflet on legacy giving. Remember, every gift in a will we receive, big or small, enables us to continue supporting islanders affected by sight loss to live fuller, more independent lives. With a growing number of islanders affected by sight loss, your gift will help ensure we remain able to help.
The Sight for Wight 100 Club. Did you know here at Sight for Wight we have our own monthly lottery? Currently limited to 100 entries each month, a ball is randomly picked out of the bag and the winner notified and sent their prize money. Members of this 100 Club pay just £2 per ball per month, either by monthly, annual standing order or cheque, and you can have up to 6 balls. So if you're feeling lucky, why not join us? Each month, 40% of the money collected is paid to the single prize winner, 10% covers costs, including our lottery licence, and a whopping 50% is donated back to Sight for Wight every month to help fund our member activities and services. Lucky winners over the last 6 months have included Lorna Hills, John Moore, Susan Earley, Pauline Emmett and Vivian Booth. Could you be the next lucky winner? If you wish to join us, please call on 522205, email Lisa on finance@iwsb.org.uk, or just pop in for an application form. But hurry, there are limited numbers available.
Yoga taster session. Sight for Wight hosted a taster yoga session on Friday, 5th of October at Millbrook House. The class was run by experienced yoga teacher Sue Bolton, who has been teaching yoga around the island for many years and holds regular classes. 6 members, 1 volunteer and 2 guide dogs completed an hour and a half of gentle restorative yoga. Everyone enjoyed the taster session, and following the positive feedback, we will be looking to run a longer 6-week course in the near future.
Low Vision Drop-In Day at Millbrook House. On Wednesday the 19th of September, Sight for Wight hosted a Low Vision Drop-In Day at Millbrook House, which tied in with International Talk Like a Pirate Day. Staff took this on with gusto and dressed up as pirates, which exhibitors and visitors found very entertaining, adding to the enjoyment of the day. Fortunately, no one had to walk the plank, but visitors enjoyed pieces of 8 from the treasure chest, whilst chatting with exhibitors from Dolphin, Professional Vision Services, Orcam, Macular Society, and Age UK's Digital Inclusion Tutor. Approximately 30 people were enlightened and entertained by exhibitors and staff, and for anyone who wasn't able to come along, Sight for Wight hosts a low vision drop-in every Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 12 alongside the coffee morning at Millbrook House. Sight for Wight will be hosting another low vision drop-in early next year, so keep checking our website for updates.
Group summer outings. Back in August, the Wednesday social group and the Thursday social group both enjoyed their annual days out. The first trip was to Haven Street Steam Railway, where the group had refreshments in the cafe before a ride on the steam train through the sunny countryside. This was followed by a visit to the gift shop and then lunch at the White Lion in Arreton. Later on in the month, a group of members were picked up by minibus and taken to Cowes, where they travelled by boat to the Folly Inn. A pub lunch was enjoyed by all before taking the boat back along the river to Cowes. The weather was good for both trips and made for 2 enjoyable days out. Special thanks to the volunteers that gave up their time to act as sighted guides. We'd not be able to run these day trips without your support.
Supper Club Autumn Specials. Potato and leek soup, dairy-free and gluten-free. The basic ingredients for 4 portions are 1 onion, peeled and finely chopped, 2 large leeks, thoroughly washed and finely chopped, 4 medium-sized potatoes, washed and cut into small pieces, leave the skin on, 2 gluten-free stock cubes, vegetable or chicken according to preference, and a generous tablespoon of your favourite vegetable oil for cooking. Here's the method. Put oil in a large pan on a gentle heat, add all vegetables and stir well. Sweat for 15 minutes until soft. Make an instant stock with gluten-free cubes and a litre of boiled water. Pour stock over vegetables and simmer for just 20 minutes. Check all vegetables are cooked. Check and adjust seasoning according to taste. Allow pan contents to cool slightly before transferring to a blender in batches. Blitz thoroughly to obtain a smooth and creamy texture. Return to a rinsed pan to reheat. Some top tips. Use bump-ons to mark your most frequently used blender buttons. Try adding a little grated nutmeg in the seasoning for a little warmth. And if you prefer a stronger flavour of leek, try 4 leeks and 2 potatoes.
Apple and ginger crumble, gluten-free. Basic ingredients for 6 portions. 3 cooking apples, peeled, cored and roughly chopped. 1 generous piece of root ginger, more finely chopped. 100 grams of golden caster sugar plus a sprinkling. 75 grams of butter. 150 grams of gluten-free oats. The method: gently cook chopped apples and root ginger with a tablespoon of water and a sprinkling of sugar to taste. Once cooked, transfer to generously cover the base of an oven-proof dish. Preheat oven to 200 degrees C or gas mark 6. In a large bowl, rub the butter into the oats and sugar until thoroughly mixed, or pop these 3 ingredients into a blender and blitz together if preferred. Place the crumble mix over the apple mixture and cook in oven for 30 or more minutes until golden brown. Some top tips. Use bump-ons to mark preferred blender button settings. Variations of this recipe can be tried to suit your taste. Omit the ginger and add some blackberries or any other favourite fruit in season. Alternatively, stick with just apple and flavour with a good pinch of cinnamon or a few cloves. Serve with fat-free natural yoghurt, creme fraiche, cream or ice cream, according to how self-indulgent you're feeling.
This is a week in the life of a trustee/volunteer, John Moore. I wear 2 hats which some days merge into one. When I wear my trustee's hat, I'm involved in board meetings for Sight for Wight, which can include finance matters, helping to plan fundraising events, and being part of the working party for Millbrook House. As a volunteer, it's more of a hands-on job. I'm one of a team of minibus drivers. I can be driving the usual route to and from Millbrook House, transporting our members to various clubs, but we also go out on adventures. A recent one was to Rosemary Vineyard, with an excellent guided tour of the premises, followed by a taster session. Unfortunately, as the driver, I had to abstain, but everyone else thoroughly enjoyed it. Recently we boarded the train at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway for a round trip. We all became as excited as children. It was great fun, and laughter and chatter followed at the pub lunch. Another outing involved a boat trip from Cowes Marina to the Folly Inn and back. It was a windy day, but this added to the thrill of the ride. The Society attends various fairs and shows on the island. I helped to set up the stand the day before the Wolverton Garden Show, before donning a fetching sash the following morning to man the stall. We promoted low vision aids and equipment, information about the Society, and ran a tombola. We received lots of interest and questions about what the Society offers to local island residents. I now seem to have become a sort of handyman at Millbrook House, with requests such as, "John, could you just put up a handrail, move a cupboard, do some painting?" But I thoroughly enjoy being involved with the team at Millbrook House and meeting and assisting our members.
Now, wall climbing at West Wight Sports Centre. On Monday the 1st of October, Laura Jasper, Member Services Manager, along with members and volunteers, went to the West Wight Sports Centre in Freshwater and had a go at the climbing wall. There were 2 instructors who were brilliant and talked everyone through the equipment and safety procedures before letting them loose on the wall. Members were able to have a go, both at climbing and also being the person in control of the rope at the bottom of the wall. It was a great morning, and Sight for Wight is looking forward to a repeat visit. A huge thank you to everyone at West Wight Sports Centre for helping to organise such a great activity.
Don't look down. On the 1st of October, I took part in a climbing taster session provided by Sight for Wight. We went to West Wight Sports Centre and waited with some trepidation in the cafe for the rest of the group, and more importantly, the instructors. There were 3 visually impaired climbers in total and 2 sighted volunteers, and we were joined by Matt and Gordon, our instructors for the 90-minute session. To begin with, we were talked through the equipment. We had to wear climbing helmets and harnesses, which were very unflattering but also very necessary. The instructors went through the safety guidelines and the basics of what we were going to do, and then we were off. We took it in turns. One of us climbed while the other acted as the emergency brake. The wall is rough like concrete and has hand and footholds screwed in at various intervals. There is a rope hanging from the top. One end attaches to the climber and one to their partner. At all times the rope needs to be taut, and there is a special friction mechanism to make sure the climber doesn't just fall to the ground. On each route up the wall, which is about 7 metres, there is an overhang, and it does take some effort to get to the top. I only managed it on my 2nd attempt. It is amazing how tired your arms get. The most unnerving bit was letting go and leaning back to let your partner lower you down. It felt very unnatural and was a real leap of faith. I had a brilliant time, and I'm in the process of booking further sessions with an instructor for my daughter and I. I would definitely recommend this activity for anyone who is reasonably active. It doesn't matter if you can't see. In fact, it helps, especially when you get to the top. The staff at West Wight were really helpful, and our instructors explained things very well, letting us feel knots and equipment and explaining everything in detail. Go on, have a go. By Ruth Hollingshead.
The Short Story Writing Competition 2018. By the time you read this, the deadline for the short story writing competition will have lapsed. This year's award ceremony is taking on a different style and venue. For those of you who attended last year at Newport Minster, you'll no doubt remember that it was literally freezing cold inside the building due to their boiler unfortunately breaking down just a couple of days before our event. I'm delighted to report that the venue this year will be the Riverside Centre, Trafalgar Room, complete with stage and heating. There will be the usual award ceremony with the 3 winning categories, under 12, 12 to 17 and 18 plus. In addition to this, there will be a 4th winner which could be from any category. This is due to the high quality of entries we had last year. I felt that it warranted another celebrity reader. Talking of celebrity readers, we have Idana Minghella and Melvin Hayes returning, and newcomers Kate Weston, presenter at Wave 105, and comedian Joe Brand, who needs no introduction. The doors open at 6:30 p.m. on Monday 17th of December, where you'll be greeted by singing from the choir, melodic to help you get into the festive spirit. There'll be entertainment from everyone's favourite island magician, Huxley, and closing the evening will be acoustic guitarist and new young island talent, Tyler Gorman. That's from Chris. There'll also be a raffle on the night with some great prizes. That's from Chris Kane.
Volunteer News Round. Welcome. We're pleased to welcome 6 new volunteers to the team. 4 volunteers will be based at Dress for Less as retail/customer care support, and 2 volunteers will be joining the Talking News team. Au revoir. Sadly, since the last edition, we have said goodbye to 4 volunteers, one of whom has supported the Society in her volunteer role for 9 years and is looking forward to her well-earned retirement. 2 of our volunteers supported the Society with Talking News and Dress for Less. The good news is that our 4th volunteer has left her role to join the staff team as a part-time receptionist/administrator, a role which we all welcome her to. Volunteer vacancies. We have volunteer vacancies in various roles, for example, minibus escort, minibus drivers, home visitors, sighted guides for our monthly walks, Dress for Less, retail volunteers and lead volunteers, and support with fundraising, events ambassadors, throughout the summer months of 2019. From early January 2019, there's a female volunteer vacancy for an escort on Tuesday evening fortnightly to meet at Waterside Pool Ride to support our lady members to and from the changing room. Should you know anyone who may be interested in any of these vacancies, please let me know and I will be happy to send an application pack or discuss the various volunteer roles available.
Volunteer recruitment. I attended the Isle of Wight College Freshers' Days on the 4th and 5th of October with the aim of recruiting volunteers, in particular as ambassadors for next summer's events. My colleague Chris Kane also attended to promote the forthcoming 2018 story writing competition. The event was well attended by students and teachers and resulted in a lot of positive feedback, potential volunteer applicants and budding writers. There were over 20 entry forms handed out. I will be attending the annual Volunteer Recruitment Day at Ventnor Botanic Gardens on Saturday the 13th of January 2019 between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m, which for the last 3 years has proved to be a productive and enjoyable day in terms of recruiting, promoting the society and networking. A lovely venue which attracts a lot of interest. My Guide Sighted Volunteer Update. Following the series of training sessions held here at Millbrook House for My Guide Sighted Volunteers, which is a new role in collaboration with guide dogs, I am pleased to share that 2 volunteers have successfully completed levels 1 and 2 with a view to supporting members who are on the waiting list for this service. Next team update. Tuesday the 11th of December 2018 at Millbrook House, 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Mulled wine, mince pies and live music donated by saxophonist Music Craft. Invitations to follow, but please pencil into your diary as this promises to be a festive and fun pre-Christmas get-together and an opportunity to thank you for all the support and time you have donated to the Society during 2018. And that's from Michelle Taylor, our volunteer manager.
Dress for Less. Is it really November already? Time is flying by as we're now accepting our autumn and winter stock at Dress for Less. We've had a most wonderful summer in the shop. However, I must confess that I quite like the thought of snuggling up in winter jumpers and comfy boots. We've been receiving a lot of extremely positive feedback from our customers, complimenting us upon the personal and friendly service that they receive, as well as the new layout of the shop. We have many returning customers, both buying and selling wonderful high-end clothes, such as L.K. Bennett, Hobbs and Jewels, to name just a few. Over the past few months, it's been our pleasure to provide entire outfits for various weddings, cruises, the Queen's Garden Party at Buckingham Palace, Cowes Week Regatta, and various horse racing events. None of this would have been possible without the hard work and enthusiasm of our superb team of volunteers who work tirelessly to maintain high standards throughout the shop. Our volunteers have provided some wonderful ideas regarding the day-to-day running of the shop, and those implemented have significantly contributed to increased sales and an all-round happy shopping experience. Since I last wrote, it's been my pleasure to welcome 3 new volunteers to the team. All were customers who, having experienced the friendly and fun atmosphere within the shop, chose to put themselves forward to join us. Each has the exact persona that we're looking for to promote and carry forward the good name of Dress for Less. We've had our first social gathering, which was attended by about 15 volunteers. It was great to get everybody together and to share thoughts and ideas over tea and cake. Always a great combination. That's from Debbie Durbridge, Dress for Less manager.
New for autumn at Dress for Less. Low Vision Days and volunteer recruitment come to Dress for Less. To make innovative use of the large shop window, on the last Thursday of each month, volunteer managers Michelle and member services manager Laura will have a display in the St James Street Dress for Less boutique. Situated directly opposite the Wetherspoons Man in the Moon pub, the shop is ideally located and affords easy access to anyone visiting Newport. We aim to be there between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. with a selection of low vision aids and literature. We look forward to welcoming members and prospective new volunteers who may find the shop more accessible than Millbrook House.
What's on at Sight for Wight? The Ride Swimming Group. Our swimming group meets every Tuesday evening from 8 p.m. till 8:45 p.m. at the Waterside Pool in Ryde. They have exclusive use of the pool during this session. The group is open to any visually impaired person who is a keen swimmer or who just enjoys being in the water. The pool's lifeguards are in attendance during the session. Pre-registering with the Society is essential, otherwise you may be refused admittance.
The Wednesday coffee morning. We hold a coffee morning each week on a Wednesday at Millbrook House from 10 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. All are welcome to join us for a cup of tea or coffee and cake. The cost is £1 and the group is open to all, not just members. On the first Wednesday of each month, we're joined by the Macular Society for their monthly meet-up.
Wednesday, low vision drop-in. Every Wednesday between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. we hold a low vision drop-in session. This coincides with the coffee morning and allows you to view and try the low vision equipment we have at the Society without the need for an appointment. If this time is not suitable for you, then you are welcome to call the Society to make an appointment to view our low vision equipment.
Wednesday Social Group. Our Wednesday Social Group meets every fortnight from 2 p.m. at Millbrook House. The group has different speakers who come to give talks on a variety of subjects. These have ranged from singers to ghost talks. After the talk, the group chat over a cup of tea or coffee before going home. This group is open to non-members, but please register your interest in advance.
The Thursday social group meets every week from 10:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. at Millbrook House, where they engage with other visually impaired people. They socialise and enjoy lunch together. In the afternoon, the group welcome volunteers who come in to read from various books about local history, general fiction, or a more popular choice, comedy. This group is open to non-members, but please register your interest in advance.
The monthly book group. Sight for Wight hold a book group on the second Wednesday of each month at Lord Louis Library in Newport. The group runs from 1:30 p.m. for about an hour. We discuss the last month's book and then hand out the book for the next month. Books are available on USB stick or CD. Refreshments are provided and guide dogs are welcome. There is no charge to join the book group. If you would like more information, please call Laura Jasper on 01983 522205 or email to members@iwsb.org.uk. Strollers meet on the second Tuesday of the month. They go for gentle strolls, enjoying the countryside or coastal views. This is followed by lunch at a pub or restaurant. The group is open to all visually impaired people who like a leisurely walk of about a mile.
Striders. Striders meet on the last Friday of every month. They walk on different routes around the island and then finish off with lunch at a local pub or restaurant. This group is open to all visually impaired people who like longer walks in the countryside.
The bowling group meets once a month at LA Bowl in Ryde. The cost is £3.95 for 2 games. This group is open to all visually impaired people. Please note there is no transport for this group.
The golfers meet once a month on a Sunday morning at Westridge Golf Club Ryde. The group go onto the driving ranges and out onto the course. An instructor is available to help out beginners. The golf session lasts around an hour and is followed by refreshments and a chat in the cafe.
Winter activities. Members' Christmas Party. The Sight for Wight Members' Christmas Party will be held at Millbrook House on Thursday the 13th of December from 2 p.m. till 4 p.m. There will be mulled wine and mince pies, with entertainment from a very talented saxophonist who entertained the Wednesday social group earlier in the year. To RSVP, please call on 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk. We look forward to welcoming you to this festive afternoon.
Christmas Fair at the Riverside Centre. This year Sight for Wight will be joining the Riverside Christmas Fair, which is being held at the Riverside Centre, the Quay, Newport. The event is on Saturday 8th of December, 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. There'll be a number of stalls including crafts, gifts, refreshments, Santa's Grotto and carol singing. We hope to see you there.
Social group Christmas lunches. The Wednesday social group Christmas lunch will be held on Wednesday the 12th of December. The Thursday social group Christmas lunch will be held on Thursday the 20th of December. To register your interest or for more information, please call 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
Sight for Wight Legacies. We need your help. As an independent island charity, we receive no statutory funding and rely on the generosity of our supporters and the local community. Every gift in the will we receive, big or small, enables us to continue supporting islanders affected by sight loss to live fuller, more independent lives. Your will. The process of writing a will can seem daunting, and it is something many of us put off, but it is the only way of ensuring your wishes are met and enables you to take care of those closest to you. A gift in your will also enables you to remember the causes you care about. Unfortunately, not making a will can cause administrative and legal complications for your loved ones at a very difficult time. If you don't have a will, having one written by a solicitor is a lot easier than you might think. If you already have a will, changing it to include a gift to Sight for Wight, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, is very straightforward. If you've already remembered Sight for Wight in your will, thank you. Your generosity will help islanders affected by sight loss enjoy the varied support and services we offer into the future. Your gift. With a growing number of islanders affected by sight loss, your gift will help to ensure we remain able to help. For more information, please contact 01983 522205.
Leaving a gift in your will for Sight for Wight. How we will use your donation. A gift left in your will to Sight for Wight could help in several ways. You may choose to have your gift used to support the overall work of Sight for Wight, whose services are regularly reviewed and evolve to best meet the needs identified by those it serves. You may prefer to define the aspect of our work to benefit from your support. Production of the quarterly Sight for Wight newsletter, supporting the Sight for Wight audio library that includes production and distribution of the weekly talking news, delivery of other activities and services for members affected by sight loss, ranging from regular clubs, coffee mornings, low vision demonstration days, plus one-off activities and events to appeal across all ages. Supporting the delivery of an education and outreach programme across the island to make others more aware of the lifestyle choices that can help promote avoidable sight loss, to enable others to better understand the particular needs of those affected by sight loss, and to enable family and community members offer appropriate sighted guide support. What about inheritance tax? Leaving a gift to a charity such as Sight for Wight can lower the inheritance tax payable on your estate. Your solicitor can answer any questions you have about inheritance tax. To learn more, please contact 01983 5222 05.
And now those dates for your diary. The Wednesday social group Christmas lunch will be held on Wednesday 12th of December. The members' Christmas afternoon with mulled wine and mince pies will be held on Thursday 13th of December from 2 till 4 p.m. The Thursday social group Christmas lunch will be held on Thursday the 20th of December. Save the dates, more details to follow. We will be holding a digital training day at Millbrook House on Tuesday 4th of December 2018. More details and invitations to follow. Sight for Wight Christmas closing. We will be closed the week commencing the 24th of December and will reopen on Wednesday the 2nd of January 2019. The Bryston Christmas Tree Festival. Sight for Wight will be displaying a tree in the 22nd Bryston Christmas Tree Festival, which is being held the 6th to the 9th of December, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. This year there will be 7 venues across Bryston, Mottiston and the surrounding areas. The Christmas Tree Festival has to date raised over £120,000 for a selection of charities. See www.bxtf.org for more information.
To register your interest or for more information on any topics included in this issue, please call 522205 or email members@iwsb.org.uk.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Are UK streets becoming no-go areas for visually impaired people? For years, In Touch listeners have been claiming that they are. Now we're planning a series of investigations into getting around in 2018 and beyond. We'll also be asking for your help. And why one listener has been drilling holes in his garbage bin. But before all that, the annual prize, which could be helping to get new Braille products onto the market. Not-for-profit organisation National Braille Press in the United States awards up to $20,000 to innovators in Braille and tactile technology. Well, I've been speaking to one of the previous prize winners about their offering for visually impaired children with additional disabilities. But first, Brian MacDonald of National Braille Press told me how the award came about.
Well, National Braille Press, our focus is on Braille literacy. That's our primary part of our mission. And so we've broadened it to the point where the prize is really to support anything in the field of Braille or tactile literacy. It doesn't have to be directly Braille. It can have impacts in different ways that still help with communication or education. And so we have a pretty broad category. It can cover software, hardware, apps, educational curriculum, and different types of projects.
And just give me some idea of the kind of equipment that have been former prize winners.
We have had many projects that submitted refreshable Braille displays from many countries. None of them have won. We have had a talking tablet that actually uses tactile feeling of graphics with an audio feedback to it. We've had a Braille mechanical ruler that actually gives very accurate measurements with mechanical Braille.
Well, let me bring in one of the prize winners because Dr. Betsy Fleener, you're responsible for a piece of equipment which, as we've said, isn't actually, strictly speaking, Braille. It's a tactile talk toolkit for iPad. Tell me a bit more about that, what it's for, who it's for.
The Tactile Talk Toolkit is actually designed for children who are blind or visually impaired and have additional disabilities. Typically, those children are going to be, they may be nonverbal or have limited communication skills. The toolkit consists of 30 overlays that go on top the iPad. And an overlay is a little bit like a screen protector in that it's conductive like a screen protector, but it's a little thicker. And these overlays have either pieces of objects or paint or a combination of both that are raised and that are felt by the child and are very tactily discernible.
And what does that enable the child to do?
Okay, well, the first objective is for the child to be able to communicate. So, for example, if the child feels the symbol for eat, taps next to it, then it will take the child to a page of various choices for snacks. And then the overlay is changed and there are very different objects that represent or paint, raised paint that represent snack choices.
And the key thing is that it's talking, all this time it's talking to the child, actually saying what the thing is.
Exactly.
Let me just finally go back to Brian MacDonald. Amongst the products that you've discovered this way, Braille Me was one that won in 2017. Now, that was a Braille note-taking device from India, and it now looks as though National Braille Press will be a distributor of the product. Is this a clever strategy, really, for finding products for National Braille Press to distribute?
Yes, it certainly is helpful for us. We see 20 to 25 entries every year from all over the world, and our Center for Braille Innovation is designed specifically to find researchers around the world that are innovative or new technologies that could support Braille or tactile literacy. And our goal as a nonprofit is to find a way to be the broker of that information and find partners to make it the lowest cost available for the market.
There are still some people who are apt to say, you know, that with speech technology developing all the time, Braille has maybe had its day, that other technologies can help far more. What do you say to that?
I don't know how to say it in a British way that's funny, but it's a bunch of bunk. Let's put it that way. But in all honesty, Braille is literacy for a blind person as defined. You can't do a complex equation or read a very complex document without using Braille. So it's still very valuable and just as relevant in the digital age as it was 30 years ago. So the answer is it's still just as relevant. We're trying to just leverage technology to make it even more capable for blind and low vision people to be fully connected to the Internet of Things and still use Braille in those devices.
Brian MacDonald and Betsy Fleener. And you can find more information about the Touch of Genius prize on our website. The response to our item last week about the tricky business of recycling was the biggest we've had for some time. Many of you were keen to share your techniques and the varied performances of your local authorities. Stephen says that when he first arrived in Cambridgeshire, the council provided braille labels for each of his 3 bins. Each label detailed what they expected in each bin and gave a list of items which were not welcomed. Meanwhile, Brian from Chessington decided to take labelling matters into his own hands. He says, "I've now drilled a series of holes in the upper flange of the bins with sighted help. Up to 4 holes. This also stops me getting a neighbour's bin, as if I come upon a bin with no holes, I know it's not mine." Anne Rigby from Chester reckons her council has been helpful too with labelling, but says the issue they have more difficulty with is the way in which empty bins are returned, or not, to the households. Anne says apparently crews aren't insured to step onto the properties, so bins and recycling boxes are often just scattered around all over the pavements. She says this means going out on bin days can be pretty treacherous. So much so, she's in the process of making a complaint. And there were mixed feelings about the suggestion that people should identify themselves as visually impaired to their council. Andrew Walker from Scunthorpe was mildly irritated, his words, by the implication that it's natural to be reluctant to ask for assistance on the grounds of visual impairment. "I see nothing wrong," Andrew says, "with asking for assistance and wouldn't expect my local authority to second guess my needs." Clive Lever couldn't disagree more. He says that a council with an equality strategy worth its salt should carry out equality analysis of its services. Clive says the first thing I'm going to do after having sent this email is to tweet the link to the In Touch programme to urge people to get their councillors to listen to tonight's programme. So, welcome guys. Hope you're paying attention. Now, if we seem to be obsessed with so-called shared spaces, it's because many of you have made it clear over the past 10 years or more that this concept is blighting your lives. The principle is that traffic, bicycles, pedestrians can happily use the same space, and that our streets will be less cluttered and more relaxed if we do. There's more, of course, but I can't do better than allow the blind people of Leeds talking to us back in 2008 to explain why they thought it was a thoroughly bad idea, even back then.
People have a dedicated pathway, that's a pedestrian right-of-way, and you feel safe and secure actually using that. When you talk about shared surfaces, it's basically the loss of that security through the loss of the path from the experiences which I've had and others have had. And it's the dangers that are inherently associated with an individual pedestrian being mixed with road traffic and actually feeling that you're the poor relative when it comes to any confrontation between a vehicle or a pedestrian.
We're asking for a tarmac pavement which has got a different colour, or we're asking for paving stones so that we can distinguish between the shared space area and the pavement.
They do say that the driver should have eye contact with you. They can't have eye contact with me because I've no sight whatsoever. In fact, I'll take my eyes out and wave them at them.
But despite those trenchant views, what began as an experimental trickle of shared space schemes rapidly turned to a flood. Many planners seemed to love the idea. Local authorities claimed they'd consulted widely, and supporters of the schemes pointed out that the predicted dangers hadn't resulted in the predicted accidents. Meanwhile, we've covered demonstrations against them, parliamentary debates, and in Lisburn, in Northern Ireland, a successful judicial review against the town's shared space scheme. But despite the success of that judicial review, is there more to this than a persecuted minority being ignored by the planners? After all, it's not just the UK. These schemes are proving popular in many other parts of Europe and beyond. And alongside such developments are coming electric cars, self-driving cars and alternative public transport schemes, which look like completely changing the scene in the years to come. Well, perhaps we have to adapt the methods we use to get about in order to cope. These are big questions which we want to examine over the next year, and almost by accident we've come across a project with the same agenda. It's based in the city where some of our earliest protesters came from. Anna Lawson is Professor of Law and Director of the Centre for Disability Studies at Leeds University. She's about to start on a 5-year project funded with EU money to investigate how the streets here and in 4 other countries exclude those who don't conform to the typical driver, cyclist or pedestrian. Handy then that she's come across a colleague whose brief is to map the cities of the future and how we will want to operate within them.
I'm Richard Romano. I'm a professor, chair in driving simulation at University of Leeds. So the first step is really to provide a digital representation of the city. So this
Professor Romano uses digital techniques to simulate developments in transport and urban design in modern cities.
Them to say, well, I've always wanted a pedestrian crossing here, or I've always wanted a cycling lane there, and laying out all those things and collecting all that information, and then we can get together as a group and make decisions as to which ones we'd like to evaluate a little more, and then we can implement those both, say, rapidly on the street if there's some things, so we could paint a bike lane down or put some new light touch infrastructure in and test it. Or we could do the same thing in our virtual model and then have people put on a headset, so you see these VR headsets in the news and everything like that, and walk around and experience it and say, oh yeah, that's pretty good, or no, it felt really dangerous to be in that spot. Because we can also bring then in our immersive simulation, have traffic driving down the road and everything else. So you're really interacting like it's a typical day in Bradford.
I've found it fascinating listening to that actually, because part of the aims of the project are the main aim is to capture the experience of exclusion that disabled people and older people in particular experience when they're using streets. And we're going to be using film and video and storytelling as part of capturing their experience. And then also built in is a link to the type of technology that Rich has developed and been using here in Leeds. And I think some of the ongoing technology that emerges through projects like the one you're describing would be really helpful for my project as well, because it's about looking at the way technology can help to throw light on the experience of people so that can be taken into account by people who are designing cities or imagining cities and what they would look like. Because there's some evidence that in the past, when people experience streets that feel dangerous or difficult to use, they stop going there, and then they stop being counted for purposes of, when surveys are taken, they tend to focus on people who are still using the streets. So the experiences of those who have stopped using them become less relevant and less factored into future design in some ways.
One of the things I think that's pointed out very well there is this whole idea of a downward spiral that you need to stop and we need to get it to go the other way, this whole concept of not being counted. So if people aren't going to the local park and using it because there's something else that's causing them not to go there, and so it's understanding what are the access issues to that.
That's right, and I think sometimes, people think, oh, it's accessible because there aren't curbs or, there's flat curbs. And that's been a particular problem that's come to the fore in relation to blind people in the last couple of years. Something called shared space has been really controversial. Although technically it looks quite accessible because it doesn't have, hard obstacles like curbs. The problem is it's a traffic calming measure initially, that the idea is that drivers and pedestrians share the same space, and that means that drivers go slower and they have different types of interaction with pedestrians. But there's growing evidence that for blind people, but also for lots of other disabled and older people actually, that can be a very problematic type of space to use. That's about policy and the way streets are being designed in a way that looks accessible, but actually it creates new sorts of barrier that drives people away.
In what ways? What would be the...
Well, blind people can't tell when a car's coming towards them. You can hear that it's somewhere near, but you can't necessarily tell that the driver's seen you and is going to stop. Guide dogs, it creates problems because guide dogs are used to walking in the middle of a curb. What do they do in a big open space? There's no consistency about the type of tactile marking that's there. So it's very confusing for a blind person to know what the signals actually mean. And then for wheelchair users, they've stated that they're often not able to make the kind of eye contact with drivers that they need to in order to feel safe to cross a road. So people have left university because shared spaces have been introduced between their home and the university buildings. People have moved home because of these things being introduced. And it's a type of design that's being introduced quite rapidly in lots of different areas of the UK and other countries. And there's still limited research on the experiences of older and disabled people in using these things.
But isn't this something time urgent? Like, this shouldn't this be happening now? If
Yes.
these things are going on, like your
Yes.
5-year plan that's sort of...
Yes, yeah, that's very right. Things are going on now. There is quite a lot of campaigning. One of the other aims of the project is to look at the ways different types of campaign happen and the ways in which solidarity can be developed and through technologies like the ones Rich has been describing, the way people who experience these types of barrier can develop a sense of shared exclusion and deepen that sense of solidarity with other sectors of the population rather than it being perceived as a real niche issue that only affects certain pockets of the population and therefore isn't so important perhaps.
Maybe it would help some of the policymakers to consider the blind perspective if they had, if that was done on simulators where they could visualise the experience of a blind person going down this.
That's exactly the plan. Yeah, so there's a pedestrian simulator that Rich has developed.
Yeah, well, that's the best way to imagine it is it's a glass-walled room. There's projectors on the other side of the wall, projecting onto the glass and making you feel like you're anywhere in the world. And so with that, rather than using a headset, we can create something that with visual and audio cues that feels like you're in the real world. If you look at limited sight or limited hearing, there's a lot of people who have some mixture of both. So we can begin to understand the needs and test all these things, but we can also bring people in and give them the equivalent filtering and let them experience what other people experience.
Professors Anna Lawson and Rich Romano. And our thanks to BBC producer Sue Mitchell. In the months to come, we're hoping to follow some of Anna Lawson's work, and we're also interested in exploring more widely how we, as blind people, can keep our independence in this fast-changing world, and whether we're missing out by continuing to rely so heavily on dogs and canes to navigate. Call our action line on 0800 044 044 or email intouch@bbc.co.uk. From me, Peter Wight, producer Lee Kumitat and the team, goodbye.